Welcome, everyone. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Yes. Basine?
Here.
Campson?
Here.
Clanton?
Present.
Gabriel?
Present.
Jordan?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Martin?
Here. Okay, the first part of our meeting, we have our workshop where we're going to go over the, go over with Dr. Birdsong. We're going to prepare for her formative evaluation, and I had emailed just a few minutes ago, so I apologize, a draft timeline that I'd like to use to go over. And so I'm going to give you a few minutes to pull that up. Oh, just a minute.
Is there a way that Ms. Tanner can share the screen?
I will need a copy of what.
Right, I'm going to send it right now.
Okay, and then I'll post it on Board Docs for you. I don't have it. Okay.
My printer ran out of paper. So we're going to have a real, like, old school work session where things are going on as we're talking. So actual business being done. Okay, Ms. Tanner, I just sent it to you.
May we ask questions?
Yeah,
Or do we just wait?
This is work session, so I think it should be obvious, but I mean, and we've all kind of talked about this, it's pretty difficult having these meetings online like this when we're not around the table and having kind of the informal part of our conversation. And this is the workshop. This is where we need to be doing that, so as much as we can. It's just been so long. I mean, I miss seeing you guys in person, to be honest. But I mean, I think that we've just been on this media form for so long that it's really kind of taken away from that personal engagement that we have during these really important moments. I mean, our superintendent's evaluation for her first time, this is such a personal, professional moment, to really, that element kind of being on this flat screen, we really don't have that. So, I mean, I just want to take a moment and kind of personalize what we're doing here. So yeah.
Yeah, we still have phones though.
So I can ask a question?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, go ahead. I'm having a moment.
I'm confused, and that's not unusual. Whoa. Oh, my screen went black. Oh, okay. Thank you. So I'm looking at the dates, and it has January 27th, which would be, mid-year. And it looks like we have that down for the superintendent to have her summative end of the year evaluation.
Oh,
in
sorry.
January.
Yeah, that's supposed to say formative. See, I mean, mistakes.
Oh, thank you. Because I'm like, whoa, the rules must have changed. Okay, formative. Let me just change that. Thank you very much.
That's what this is for.
Right. So would we get the other half that leads us down to the timeline for the summative, which would certainly not be until June. Right.
Can we get through the formative?
Okay.
And then, yeah, because, this is the first time everyone's seeing this. So
then we probably need to change. Okay, cool.
Go ahead. Did you have a suggestion?
No, I see it at the top. And I just want to make sure, because, and Ms. Tanner has this so that the public's seeing this as well. We've got a copy. I know it's seen it on the screen.
It's being streamed right now, Mr. Clanton.
Can everyone see it? Is there anyone who cannot see the timeline? Okay. Okay, so I'll just go over it. I'll start too. We're probably gonna have to talk. So I believe it was in October, the school board, the governance team with the superintendent, of course, we went through a superintendent evaluation workshop that was offered through the Virginia School Board Association. So that was really important for all of us to go through that process as a governance team. And again, for Dr. Birdsong's first time attending that as our superintendent. So here we are today together, and this is where I wanted to present this as a starting piece to talk about our process and timeline. And of course, the outcome would be to align our expectations moving forward. Okay, and so at our next meeting, December 2nd, so I mean, if we accomplished any of this, when combining these, it's okay. So I was thinking that we really want to establish what our performance indicators would be. I know, and this is all also drawing off of the, sorry, I got ahead of myself, the Virginia Department of Education Superintendent's Evaluation Form. And I'd like for those to be finalized by our December 11th meeting. And so we can, consolidate those indicators and come to agreement on them.
But we're not meeting on December 11th.
Let's see.
December 11th is a Friday.
Yeah.
You mean the 16th maybe?
16th, that's probably right. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then for January 6th would be the superintendent's self-evaluation, where the superintendent would present her self-evaluation, again, based on the VDOE Superintendent Evaluation Workshop, and provide the school board perspective as it relates to her performance according to the VDOE evaluation indicators. And the board would then prepare our individual assessments. And that would be due by January 11th, which is a Monday. And so it's probably me. I would compile the feedback, and then we would organize the feedback. Let's see. So that we could then be prepared to present the formative assessment to the superintendent on January 27th.
Question?
Okay, Ms. Campbell.
I don't think we should be calling it evaluation anytime during the first half of the year, because we're not formally evaluating the superintendent. And I know this has been a pandemic year, but I'd just like to point out that the performance indicators are finally decided December 9th, and the superintendent has less than a month to tie the new performance indicators that she gets on the 9th and prepare a presentation of her performance in each of those indicators. And as I said, I understand this is a pandemic year, and certainly everything's running off, but this just seems tight. We need to have the mid-year, because the mid-year is where we let the superintendent know if there's any areas we have concern with, so she can work on those before the final evaluation in June. So certainly she needs them. But that seems, and I believe this to the superintendent perhaps to say, but that's a tight timeline for her to receive indicators that she hasn't known that she was going to have to be working on during this year. And now she suddenly has to look back and try and figure out what she did that might hit each indicator. And that's a challenge for anyone being evaluated. We would not be able to do that with a teacher, for example. They would have to have everything before the 1st of October. We would not be able to evaluate them. Now the superintendent's different and she's under contract. But I just like to voice that I do have concerns about the fairness of it to the superintendent that quick.
Okay. So let's start with number 1. If you don't want to call it a formative evaluation, what would you like to call it?
I call it whatever you want, but evaluation is not what it is. It's not an evaluation until June.
Just call
Call
it
it
feedback.
assessment. That's what the state calls it.
We just always said the formative. So I'm sure it had that formative actually was not the noun in that caption, but that's what I always think of it as a formative. But it probably has something else to it. We can look back in the notebook. I don't have that in front of me. But certainly it would not be an assessment or an evaluation. It would be a way to give them information like you do with anyone so that they can work on anything that you might have a concern with, and they can demonstrate things that they might be doing that you do not have an opportunity to observe because they're doing all kinds of things. Superintendents or anybody, any member of a staff or anything are doing things that no one knows about. And so it gives them a chance to say, well, I'm doing this, this, and this that you may not be aware of, which would affect.
What about someone say assessment?
Yeah, just
That's what the state calls it,
Okay.
Calls it what?
a formative assessment.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess that would be a good one to use.
Yeah.
But certainly not an evaluation.
That's
Because
fine.
we're not
Okay.
evaluating her.
No, the next thing is the timeline of the turnaround from December 16th to January 6th. Dr. Birdsong, do you have any comments on that?
Well, this is my first opportunity to see any of this, so I am trying my best to process it as quickly as I can. I take my evaluation extremely seriously, and so I think it would be respectful to give me the opportunity to process what's being asked of me. But if I'm asked to provide feedback at this time, I would certainly suggest that we utilize the feedback that we received from the workshop that we all attended with the VSBA a couple of months ago. I believe it was in October. And as far as as it relates to like performance indicators and things of that nature, I'm not sure that that we need to be that specific. I think if we decide as a governance team to accept the guidelines for uniform performance standards and evaluation criteria for superintendents, I think if we agree to accept that document, certainly it's research-based, it's evidence-based, so that we're not kind of picking and choosing what some of the things that we're going to look at. I think it gives us a broad enough scope, especially as it relates to the 7 performance standards, that you'll be able to give me some feedback regarding my performance. I am concerned about, and I think someone already mentioned this, in terms of the quick turnaround, expected of me to provide some supporting evidence. I would say that during the formative process in January on the 27th, I think that would be a reasonable timeline for me to, by that time, have something prepared for the board to receive in terms of evidence that was discussed during our training to present to the board as it relates to those 7 performance standards. And I can't see, having something thoughtfully prepared prior to that time, especially since, today is the day that I'm actually laying eyes on for the first time on this, this process.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend.
Discuss the process, which is, yeah. So, can you clarify though, Dr. Birdsong, the 27th would be the earliest you could provide evidence of your self?
Well, if you go back to, if we go back to the retreat that we had in July with all board members, we, at that time, I felt like we established a timeline for meetings for when we would be discussing some of this. And certainly at that time, January 7th was a date that was noted that my formative would be conducted.
January 7th? Is that what you said?
The 27th?
27th,
The 27th.
right. That's what I have here, is the 27th for your formative evaluation.
So that at that time is when you would receive the evidence to support a conversation related to the evidence to support the 7 performance standards. Certainly, you know, you would receive the information in advance of that date, as you do with any board meetings, you know, giving you guys the respect of giving it to you in a timely manner so you have enough time to review it and then provide feedback when we meet.
See, I had you doing a self-assessment earlier.
The self-assessment is a part of the formative process.
Right. So you would, I'm sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head. So you would do the, so it's your self-assessment. Are you saying that I mean, that's when I thought you would provide, you know, evidence as part of your self-assessment.
The self-assessment is a part of the formative process.
Right. I have that on here. So I'm a little confused by it. So I'm just trying to understand. So when the board is talking to you about our assessment, the final version of it, that is when you would provide evidence as it relates
certainly from if it's decided that the formative would take place in January, I assume that the summative evaluation would take place in June. Between February and June, certainly additional evidence would be provided to support the 7 performance standards at that time.
right?
So you would receive additional evidence to support my performance in those areas.
Between February and June. For your
So
summer.
Exactly.
So it sounds
Yes.
like you're saying, move your assessments to the January 27th, and then the 2 that were before that, we move down into February and deliver your formative assessment to you in February. Is
No,
that right?
I'm saying that you could certainly provide the formative in January. You know, you could certainly do that on the 27th. You would receive my evidence and any supporting documentation prior to that date to review. Then we would come together to talk about it, you know, during a conference, a closed session conference, to talk about each of the domains, my evidence, your feedback, goals to continue to work on, things that have gone well, things that the board would like me to improve upon. And then based on that information, I will plan and act accordingly. And then during the formative in June, I will have even more supporting evidence and documentation to support what I've done between the formative and the summative process.
Right. Now I agree with that, but so the reason that I have this tight timeline is because we had agreed that you would have your formative assessment by the end of January. Maybe I should have started there.
Nobody's disputing that. I thought we said we're considering the 27th for that, for the formative assessment.
Yes. So I haven't gone beyond that yet. So this is all leading up to the January 27th formative assessment. And I agree with what you're saying, but what I'm trying to focus on is the comment that this timeline's too tight. So if there's, I'm trying to take suggestions for changes. I mean, we can change it however you want, and I'm not getting a lot of comments.
Again, my comment was around the self-assessment being a part of the formative process. So there doesn't need to be a separate date like January 6th to review my self-assessment. That is a part of the formative process that could take place on the 27th.
Everyone okay with that? Yes, Mr. Jordan, please take yourself off mute.
I will.
You're a pro at this by now. You've been on Zoom all day.
Yeah, all seems like that. So what from a timeline perspective, I do think we have to make sure that we provide adequate opportunity for feedback. But I think the board has work to do. So as a board, you know, we've talked about our accountability plan. We've talked about several other things, but we have to come together and be able to communicate to Dr. Birdsong what our expectations are and how we're going to measure them and when. And so I think as a board, we have to commit ourselves to that work. We haven't done that yet. I think you have that listed in your timeline, but it may take, I think, more time for us to do that work so that we can have that conversation with Dr. Birdsong, be in alignment. And then when she does her self-assessment, she is assessing herself against something that the board has taken the time to make sure that we communicate what our expectations are. So I'll just end it there. And I think that what we may need to do is to get feedback from others and then go back and put in the work to adjust the timeline as appropriate, make sure that we provide that feedback and opportunity for Dr. Birdsong to review it so we can all be on the same page in terms of our scheduling, not only for this, but all other things that we have outlined in agenda planning in order to make sure that those things flow. So I just from a timeline perspective, I think the board needs to give some consideration whether or not December 2nd is a reasonable enough time for us to do the work that we have to do. And then making sure that we can then communicate with Dr. Birdsong what it is that we've come up with. I think that's probably an important first step. And the other thing I think that we should do, and I imagine you're going to do this anyway, but just for us collectively to just walk through the tool again, as is posted on board docs, just to make sure we just have a collective understanding of what it says and what it's asking for. So as we do this collective work around the indicators and expectations, we know how to appropriately align it with the tool that we're using.
The evaluation tool.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. I mean, we could have, if Ms. Tanner can bring it up, do you want to look at it now?
I don't want to leave that. That's just my thought. I just want to make sure that we give every board member an opportunity to weigh in so that we're on the same page just in terms of our process. And then we can take the time to go through the tool if we have consensus on that type of approach.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Tanner, can you go to the page where the evaluation worksheet starts?
I think Mr. Clanton wanted to weigh in.
Oh, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just this is our third time going through this process, third year going through this process. So I just figured it would be a little bit easier. Like we had some frameworks or something. I use the tool that
we used in the past for this timeline. So
Yeah, I'm just saying, just based on even what Mr. Jordan mentioned, feedback or whatever else, getting it and being able to come back and have feedback prepared because we've been able to look at it. But I don't know. I want to help with the process here and just make sure that we're fair, that our superintendent clearly understands what we're trying to achieve, and that we are a collective unit as a governance team, and that it's fair and balanced, and that we can report it back. So I think we've gotten through the hard part of with the accountability plan. We've got that piece down there, and now we're looking at this other piece. But I don't know. I guess once we come out of here, we'll be able to use email and some other things that we have to kind of get some additional feedback in preparation, I guess.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But I mean,
But
so
we shouldn't just wait till we get to the meeting to have these types of discussions. Just like you said earlier, we can't be around the table right now, but we can all talk on the phone. We can't do it, more than one person, one-on-one, and things like that. But there's still stuff we can do, y'all, to keep.
I know I've been on the phone nonstop for days. So
well, I understand. We all are. We work and we've got things that we have to do. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but I've been trying to communicate. I've had a lot of conversations. Ms. Tan or Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I would encourage us to have as much open and transparent conversation about, this process. Yes, Zoom is exhausting, and the flat screen, it is limiting. But I would encourage us to have as open and as transparent of a conversations around this as possible. But one of the things, I think that is different. This is the first time we are doing this with Dr. Birdsong. So that's the big difference here. And this is the first time we're doing it with a new superintendent in the midst of a pandemic. So the usual steps that we would have normally have gone through with an entry plan and, all of those things, we just kind of catapulted into this, where we are today. And I think we do have to take some time to really have a collaborative discussion around goals and expectations. And we haven't had a chance to really do that. So I do think, I do agree with Mr. Jordan in that respect. So I would like for us to take some time to do that, because I think that in the long run will make a very big difference.
Okay. Do you want to go through, what would help? Would you like to go through the assessment tool right now? I was thinking we would do the, start with the timeline but we can go through the assessment tool.
Ms. Campson has her hand raised.
Sure, Ms. Campson, go ahead.
I thought that the timeline was unfair to the superintendent because it did not give her time to become familiar with any indicators beyond the ones that came with the initial guide, so that she knew exactly what the expectations were. And so that's why I suggested that. But I did not certainly suggest that we drag this out for months, because then we'll be sitting here in May in the same situation for the final evaluation, summative. So I think we need to stick to a timeline. And if we want to have a lot more discussions, then we need to do a workshop or something that doesn't start us off today looking at a 6 or 7 hour meeting. So my suggestion is, if people on the board think that we need to have more conversations about it, certainly that's fine, but I don't know that I think it should be now. But I do think that we need to decide on an exact time that we need to deliver the formative to the superintendent, and then work back from that to decide when we're going to do everything, because we need to get ourselves back on time. And so I like the ex-superintendent's idea of doing it all at once, because that's what you typically would do. You would have a draft, and then you would sit down with the superintendent, the teacher, the principal, and they would bring things. They would not do a performance show or make a big video. They would bring in their information if they have things that make them very high, things that are beyond what the document says, because if they're doing those, then we know where they are, right around the average point where most people fall. But if they do things that exceed it, and this certainly is an opportunity for it with all the extra things the superintendents had to do, she would be able to share those with us so that we would come together at that time, which is pretty typical of how this is done in the schoolhouse and in the districts. And that way we would get ourselves back on track so that we would have delivered or agreed upon the formative and where she needs to go, because there's no evaluating there. That's just a little thing so that we make sure that she knows exactly what our expectations are, and then we could be back on track. So if the superintendent is saying that she's fine with bringing along, and correct me if I'm misstating what you said, Dr. Birdsong, but it appeared to me that she was saying that she doesn't need to have a presentation and then have all these things happen. Go ahead and do what we're putting down. If we decide on the indicators she suggested, which are the ones already there, it would be nice to personalize them some for our district, but we don't have time to do that this year. For no one's fault, we are in a pandemic, but I think we need to stick to the January 27th timeline so we stay on time. If that indeed was what the superintendent was suggesting, it would be what I would support. And then we just back up our timeline, because we can already take off the one where she was doing her performance thing, which is the January 6th one. And we could be using that time to do some more discussion and working on our own drafts, or drafting it together, whichever the board decides to do. So that's just my contribution, but she needs to know by a certain time what our expectations are, and then she needs to have the rest of the year to make sure that she's doing the things that she needs to do to meet those expectations.
So if we move the self-assessment from January and then have that as part of the formative, or as part of the summative assessment evaluation.
No, part of the formative discussion, because we're not evaluating her, we're talking it over with her. This is what you do mid-year, making it too formal. It's a discussion with the superintendent, the principal, the executive director, the teacher, whoever you're evaluating, to say, these are the things I see. You're doing a really good job here. I have a few concerns here that I'd like you to do. Maybe try these things. And then the superintendent then has an opportunity to say, well, I am doing some of those things, and I brought that down. And here's some other things that I think I'm doing extremely well beyond the average, some challenges that I've met. And then you discuss that together. And then you can do the formative right there. I think you're making it harder than it is.
Okay. So essentially, is there anything else? We'll move the self-assessment conversation to, we can combine it with the 27th evaluation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sounded to me like that's what the superintendent was requesting, and that would be the typical thing you would do when you were doing evaluations in the school system, because you need to let people know mid-year. You're not evaluating them, you're just letting them know if there are any concerns you have so that they can work on those so they don't pop up again on their June eval.
All right.
I mean, am I saying what you were, Dr. Birdsong?
Yes, that's what I was trying to communicate. That again, the self-assessment is a part of the formative process, and all of that could be done at once. And again, prior to January the 27th, I think that's a Wednesday. So certainly the Friday before that, I would provide the board with some supporting evidence so that you would have time to review it, so that when we met on the 27th, we could have an engaging discussion about, my weaknesses, my strengths, and things that you would like for me to continue to work on. I do recommend, again, as I stated earlier, that that you follow the guidelines for uniform performance standards for evaluation criteria for superintendents. It's evidence-based, it's research-based. It comes out of, William and Mary, James Strong. So you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel there. I think it's a thoroughly researched document full of performance indicators and performance standards and indicators. And certainly if you needed to tweak those to make those more relevant to Norfolk, I think they're general enough that they could apply to any school division. I could certainly appreciate that. But I think a lot of these dates can be condensed into, the board deciding if this is a tool they want to use, whatever tweaks need to be done. I prepare for my formative assessment in January. We had that discussion on January the 27th. I continue to compile documentation and have ongoing conversations with the school board about the school division support, things of that nature. We plan for the formative process for June. And then at that time, I would certainly be providing additional documentation or evidence to support my work. And then you would provide a formal rating in terms of my my job performance. And we do this, this instrument, supports the structures for all of that. So that is my feedback.
Thank you, Dr. Birdsong. Ms. Smith, go ahead.
Thank you. I just prefer to have the self-assessment in advance of the formative. It allows us to review it, to digest it, and to prepare feedback, if additional feedback is needed, along with any original input that we may have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that, Ms. Smith. That's why I stated that I would have that to you in advance of our discussion so that you would have an opportunity to review it and prepare any remarks and feedback. I agree.
Any other comments? Okay.
Just one more.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Birdsong, but it seemed like I was hearing to have the self-assessment and the formative both on the 27th.
Summative.
Yeah. Yes, summative. I'm sorry.
That's right. But
okay.
But I would be giving you the documentation to support it prior to that time.
Okay, and what's the timeline on that? What's the proposed timeline? Can it still remain January 6th?
Yes, I would say that it needs to, I would suggest that it continue to be in alignment with our established practice right now, having the information to you the Friday before our Wednesday meeting.
The January 22nd. That's what I noted here.
Yeah.
Friday before the 27th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Gabriel.
How about January 1st? Or I know that's a holiday, but prior to that date. 13th.
What was that date? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'll switch it from the 1st to how about January 8th?
She was saying she'd give us the data by the 22nd, and then we would have the discussion for presenting us talking about it, with our feedback on the 27th.
Yes, and I'm asking for the 28th, and we keep the 27th for the feedback.
No, that's a Thursday. Is that what you meant, Ms. Smith?
You mean the 8th?
No, we have, I'm looking at the 6th.
Oh,
I'm on the 6th, but the 1st is a holiday. So unless someone's working on a holiday and providing information, that's not really reasonable. So having the self-assessment to the board by the 8th, and we have the summative, is that on the 27th?
The formative, sorry, that's a typo, formative.
Okay.
But isn't that almost the same as requiring her to have it by the 6th of January on a very, very short timeline?
Yeah,
I have a technical item. This meeting is, folks are having a difficult time watching this meeting. It's not being streamed right now. So I've gotten a couple of messages that folks cannot watch it. So Ms. Tanner, if you could just just be aware of that. Sorry, I just wanted to share that.
I don't think that's a short timeline.
It's streaming right now. I don't know who may be on there in Dr. Gabriel, but it's,
Well, if we're not formalizing the performance indicators until the 16th of December, leading right into the holidays, is that when she's supposed to be getting her documentation together to give us on the 6th or the 8th or whatever day it was, in the middle of the holidays? Because we're not giving her the indicators until December 16th. We're going into shortly after that 2-week winter break. And then her stuff would be due. So that seems pretty tight to me. Especially.
I'm okay with the January 22nd. That's fine. And we'll do the combined for January, the combined, like we said, dual presentation conversation on the 27th. Ms. Smith, is that okay? Can you agree to that?
No, I don't agree with it, but I'll accept it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Basine?
And just to clarify, so this January 13th date where it says special meeting, we're crossing that off.
We can.
I mean, I'm just asking for clarification because I think that might be confusing to some. Is that what we're saying, that we're going to cross that off?
No one's brought that up yet. But we were saying.
I actually didn't bring it up.
Oh,
Yeah.
who brought that up?
I feel like Dr. Birdsong mentioned it.
I did.
Oh, the self-assessment piece, and then. Let's see. So this number balance indicators. So let me ask you this. As far as the performance, do you feel like we need to have a conversation about the assessment tool, or do you want to just, does everyone feel comfortable with the assessment tool? Do we need to have any conversations about that? Okay. So do you feel comfortable if we do we even need to agree on any other indicators, or just go through that and then compile it and we'll just say it's due by, like, if we compile ours, it'll be due by January 6th, or between now and January 6th? Do you feel like everyone can write out their responses on the assessment tool, and then from the 6th for the next week, you don't have to meet on the 3rd. Let me see. As I say, we don't have to meet on the 13th. It's just with the holiday, it's just really tight. So I was thinking that we would meet on the 13th as a special meeting so that us as a board could really go through everyone's comments, consolidate them, and then we'd be prepared for the 27th.
What comments would you be consolidating? Because you're not receiving feedback until the 22nd. You'll be receiving my evidence, all of my supporting evidence for the 7 performance standards, for the self-assessment. And then on the 27th is when we have our conversation about your perceptions of my performance as superintendent. So there's really nothing to discuss on the 13th.
Well, what would end up happening is you'd receive 7 different versions of assessments, or yeah.
I'm confused because if we're using this tool, the tool is already developed. So we don't need to reinvent the tool.
Everybody
So
has a perspective, so we need to hash out comments so that we can consolidate them and come to agreement as a board and on what we are presenting to you. So if we don't meet before the 27th,
wouldn't that be based on my supporting evidence? Wouldn't your feedback be based on the evidence that you receive in terms of my performance? Of course, in addition to some other things.
on the 22nd, we would be receiving that and but then we won't have the conversation.
That's correct.
On the 7th. So before that, the board members should come together and have our own conversation, because I imagine there's some things that we don't agree on, and there's some things that maybe some have forgotten and others was really important to them. And so I think that it's important that we come together on the 27th, all 8 of us, the 7 of us prepared in an agreement to some consensus around our messages to you on based on that tool.
So that would be the board only. The board only, is that what you're saying? Okay, understood.
So that's why I think that we need to keep this January 13th date so that that's when the board can have that discussion alone. Yes, Ms. Campson.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. And Dr. Birdsong, that was also my thought, because I think we need to have a baseline of where we feel you are. And then when we sit down on the 27th, you'll be able to say, all right, these are the things that I can address here because I have done them. You just haven't had the opportunity to observe them in this kind of time. And then we would then be collaborating on it. Really, it's really, to me, this meeting on the 27th is a collaboration between what we're bringing as a board and what you're able to share with us, that you've gone beyond it or agree that perhaps we have a point here that's an area that you can work on, so that when we walk away after the 27th, you have, what it is that we want you to work on, and we can celebrate all the wonderful things that you're already doing that we didn't even think of. Mm-hmm. That's how I view it, because I think the board, I agree with Dr. Martin that we do need to come together, and rather than just have someone put together a list of every single thing everybody said for each of the standards. We tried that before, and we know that didn't go so well because it's just a list. We need to get together and talk about it so we're collaborative with it, would be mine. So I would say, that's what we would have ours together, like you said, and then we'll sit down and have our board only discussion, a whole meeting that's just dedicated to that. And then we'll be ready to meet the next week with the superintendent to go through it. And I don't think we do standard 7 for the formative. We only do the first 6 standards. Isn't that correct?
Is it 1 through
because 7 is your data.
Yeah.
And we need
7.
Yes, standard 7 is the end of the year student assessment.
I have organized feedback from standards 1 through 6. If I have 7 somewhere else, it's a typo.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you have that one. There it is, right there on for the 13th meeting. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
I think this is something new, but I like the direction we're going, because I think we're taking it down more to a more typical way that everyone's evaluated in schools and school districts. And this is the stepping stone to that evaluation. This is the piece that puts us all in the right direction, so that the superintendent becomes very clear what it is that we're looking for, and we can become much more clear on all the things that she does behind the scenes that we're not aware of.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. See, that is why I originally thought we would hear from her and kind of jog our memory and understand. But I do know that timeline is really tight, and being that it is a formative assessment. I'm willing to accept the January 22nd data to be delivered to us. We all, need to be prepared though for the 27th, which we will be on the 13th. So it's a little different, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, so we're just scratching the 6th. That won't be on our calendar. And
Right.
we'll meet on the 13th with what we already have brought to the table, which is how we have pre-assessed the superintendent. And then we'll come together as a team so that we have something ready when we meet with her on the 27th, after we've all had some time to look at her self-feedback, whatever, self-file.
Right.
Sounds good to me. But does it work for the superintendent also?
Miss Bassine,
Yes.
something?
Oh, I was going to let Dr. Birdsong respond to that.
Thank you.
Yes. So.
Oh, she said, yeah, okay. It's kind of, it's breaking in a little bit in and out for me. So I don't know if that's a technical thing. But we are having a meeting on the 6th, a school board meeting. I just want to be clear that we're not, are we or no?
No
okay.
meeting on the 6th, on the 13th, and Mrs. Bassine on the 13th.
All right, because it said special meeting. That's why I got confused. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we are meeting, we do have a scheduled meeting on the 13th.
That's our
According
school
to your
board only
schedule,
meeting.
yes.
And how does that work with our schedule of the regular meetings the board's supposed to be holding as it goes? So will the 6th that first Wednesday?
I'm looking at the
Well,
meeting.
Mrs. Campson, based on our July retreat, we did plan our board business meeting, or actually our work session, to take place on the 13th. So if we're meeting on the 13th already for a work session, I guess, the time would just need to be extended to accommodate this discussion that the board needs to have about my evaluation or formative. And then we agreed that the 20th would be the business meeting. And that was the conversation around that, I believe, was based on the return from the holidays for staff and, as you just recently mentioned.
Right, you're right. I have that on my calendar, the work session on the 13th and the business meeting on the 20th.
Ms. Tanner,
correct.
Update the board docs website, because she does have January 6th listed, January 6th, 2021.
Yeah, that's an error.
So Ms. Tanner.
That is an error.
Please.
Correct. So it's to be the 13th.
Yes.
Yes, that's what we agreed upon during the retreat.
So we can we'll do the work session and we'll do our discussion for the superintendent's summit formative on the 13th. Okay.
All right. With that, we could be done with the conversation and move on. Everyone good? All right, so
there are a couple of things that you need.
Go ahead.
There are a couple of things I don't know if you want to say this conversation, that you need to agree upon based on our workshop with the BSBA. Of course, they provide the cumulative summative ratings, exemplary, proficient, developing needs improvement, and unacceptable. Each of them having a score: exemplary 4, proficient 3, developing needs improvement 2, and unacceptable 1. One question that came up was the use of half points. Like if you wanted to rate me in an area 3.5 as opposed to a 4. So that would be a decision that the board needs to make. And also adopting the acceptable ranges for the summative score, which certainly the VDOE has provided a recommendation around that.
We had this conversation at length. The board did through the last couple of times we did this process. Last time we did the process, and what I recall was we had agreed on the full numbers and not half numbers. So
that conversation was never held with me. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion?
I would certainly, I know it's common practice for other evaluations. You may feel that, for example, a principal or teacher or whomever, maybe they're not at the exemplary level at a 4, but they're beyond the proficient level, which, you could use a half point for that. And again, this was brought up during our VSBA training. And so certainly that's the board's decision.
Could I make a quick response to that? Because during that evaluation, I particularly asked about, because we're on a 4-point scale, and I particularly asked, are we allowed to do fractions? Because then you make your 4-point scale into an 8-point scale or a 16-point scale. It's a 4-point scale, and the answer was that was very clear that no, it's a 4-point scale, and you give that. And but we shouldn't be giving points or anything anyway. This is the formative. We're not evaluating.
Right.
Right. That's a discussion for the summative. There's no evaluation scores here on a formative. It's not designed to do an evaluation. Once you put those scores down, you're evaluating. So that's something we can discuss later. But I particularly asked that question. It was on the list because that has come up earlier on the board, whether or not you give fractions and you have to commit. And it was very clear the answer was, and you can, double check, but I know what the answer was because I made sure I asked it, because I prefer a 5-point scale, but I didn't get it. We got 4-point scales. And so we have
Yeah. We're talking about 2 different things, Mrs. Campson.
Oh, okay.
This question was around having half points. We're, 2 different things. And the facilitator at that time said that, yes, you could go in that direction. It would be a board decision. And again, it's not increasing the scale. It's just being able to provide half points, like 1.5, 2.5 instead of just 1.0.
Then you're on an 8-point scale. This is something we can discuss later.
For the All right,
I'm not going to belabor the point now. We need to move on. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Well, I do understand that some people think more quantitatively when they're thinking about what they're putting down as the assessment, and it helps probably the assessor to try to gauge their comments during the formative process. But again, that's not where we are yet in the process. So that would be internal to the assessor. And is there another point, Dr. Birdsong?
And again, the board deciding upon, and again, this is for summative, but I do think it's only fair for the person to being evaluated to know up front what the criteria looks like. And so the ranges for that. And I know the DOE has provided some ranges, and I just wanted to make sure that, what the board's decision was around that.
Okay. Do you mind if we go through this process and then we can talk to you about, we can reconvene on that as we get closer to your summative, sorry.
Formative.
That's not, I mean, we could, but that's not typical. Usually when you're evaluating a person, they know up front how they're being evaluated in every part of the process. So, but if you need more time.
I just need to pull those regulations up so I can read through them. Actually, I think I printed them out earlier. Do you know? So the guidelines for uniform performance standards and criteria, is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has their hand up, I'm not looking at the screen right now. Do you know what page it's on? Is there a page you're referring to?
On the Yorktown document, which was the supporting document used for the training, it was on page 13, and it outlined suggested ranges.
Actually, I think I have this printed out next to me. Standard 7.
What's the page number again?
It's page 13.
I have it posted, Dr. Birdsong, on the screen.
Karen, that's not the document I'm referring to. It was the other supporting document that was provided at training. It's called like the Yorktown. It was basically, and I'm sure the board had seen it before.
Yeah, it's called your.
It was the sample evaluation.
You are.
I'm sorry, I don't have that then. Thank you.
I know what you're talking about.
It's on the state site.
Yes, and it's also on the state's website. Thank you, Mr. Clanton.
Karen, I'm not seeing the documents you're posting on my screen. Is there something I need to do at my screen or what?
You would be watching according to the Zoom meeting. What would be showing on your screen? I'm not sure why you're not seeing any of the documents. Right now, they're talking about a document that I don't have, so therefore it's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have not seen the schedule that was posted for the evaluation.
Mr. Cloud, maybe there's a double bar that in your gallery view, if you're seeing everybody, you can move that bar left or right, and that might allow you to view the document that Ms. Tanner is sharing with her screen.
I'm not seeing that. I have a something I can click on to exit. And I can change the speaker view. I'm not seeing the shared screen that I would usually see when Karen posts a document. It doesn't matter right now. I'm worried about later in the meeting when we may post more things.
Right. So, so the cumulative
Summative rating.
Cumulative summative rating.
Yes.
So performance standards, it says performance standards 1 through 6 will be weighed equally at 10%, and 7 will account for 40%.
No, that's the old document.
This is the one that's coming up on the website. So so
that document has been
Page
revised.
45. Page 45 is the what you're looking for, where they have the weights? Or are you looking for something else?
Well, I mean,
The points and the weights are on 45 and 46. And they're the new ones that drop standard 7 to 1.5, unfortunately.
Yeah. So they were all 1.
That is
1.5. Isn't that what it was changed to?
They were all 1 except for standard 7.
Yeah, it's 1.5.
That is correct, but I'm speaking to the cumulative summative ratings that the board has to decide upon. But the recommendation is found on page 13 of the supporting document that was provided to us at the VSBA training. The summative ratings you will not find in the document that you're looking at right now.
Oh, then we need to have that sent to us.
Yes.
Don't understand why I don't have it. This was my workbook for that workshop.
Yeah, I went back and
you don't have the supporting, you don't have the other document.
They may be in
Yorktown
another
document.
packet, but in the notebook that I created for the document here, I don't have it. I just, for the supporting documents, I don't have them in my notebook. I need to get them in here then.
So Dr. Birdsong, there's the 4, the scale of exemplary, proficient, developing, needs improvement, and unacceptable, right?
That is correct. And there's a range because you, after tabulating the scores for each performance standard, you end up with a single numerical score. And depending upon where that score falls, it determines how the person, the superintendent, myself, is rated.
Right. Since you have that document up, can you tell us what the range is?
I'm happy to do that. Again, it's located on page 13. For unacceptable, the range would be 10 to 19. The developing needs improvement range would be 20 to 25. The proficient range would be 26 to 34. And the exemplary range would be 35 to 40.
Oh, now I understand which document you're talking about.
Yes,
I don't have it before me, but yes, you just total the scores.
yes,
And then they give you the range. That's what you meant.
that's
Okay.
right.
I
Yes.
was misunderstanding what you were talking about. You were talking about the final number. I was talking about
That's
each
right.
standard. And I was saying
The
the
summative
standards are a
rating.
4-point scale, but then you total them all up.
That's right.
Yeah,
The
sorry for my
cumulative
misunderstanding.
Summative rating.
Yeah.
No worries.
Is there any reason why anyone opposed? Let's see. Is there any reason why we would not use that scale?
No.
Is there anyone opposed to using the suggested scale for the summative evaluation in June? Okay. We'll use that. Dr. Birdsong, are you okay with that?
I'm perfectly fine. It's, again, a lot of research ran into this instrument, and so it's research-based, evidence-based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Any other comments? Thank you. We're a little early, so could we, Dr. Birdsong, is your staff prepared to go into closed session?
Yes, we
Okay.
are.
Excellent. So can I get a motion to go into closed session?
Move to go
If
into,
we go into, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
I move that we go into closed session.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Campson. Go ahead, Dr. Birdsong.
Would you like to do personnel first, or we're going straight to personnel, correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Whatever's on the agenda is good.
Okay.
Ms. Tanner, please read the motion.
Move that the members of the school board go into a closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for discussion or consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of the Norfolk Public Schools pursuant to subsection 1 of the above cited code section. The subject of this portion of the session is the discussion of today's regular personnel agenda. B, consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members concerning actual or probable litigation or specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel pursuant to subsection 7 and 8 of the above cited code section. The subjects of this section of the motion are consultation and briefing regarding the matters set out in section A of this motion and the recent federal court decisions concerning the distribution of funding under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, Economic Security Act of 2020 and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. I emailed you a link for the executive session.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Tanner, please read the resolution and call the vote.
Okay. A resolution.
we need a
Oh, no,
motion
no, no.
first.
I move that we come out of closed session.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Now read the
Is that
resolution.
second by Clanton?
Yes.
Okay. All right. A resolution certifying an executive meeting of the school board of the city of Norfolk in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Whereas the school board of the city of Norfolk has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative vote recorded and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code requires a certification by the school board of the city of Norfolk that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with the Virginia law. Now therefore be resolved that the school board of the city of Norfolk hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by the Virginia law were discussed in executive meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the executive meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board of the city of Norfolk. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tanner. We're going to take a break and reconvene shortly before 7 p.m. for our business meeting.